What's up, you guys? I'm Natasha. This is my kitchen, Shepherding Peppers Farm, our little hobby farm here in South Carolina. And today I am doing another section of meal prepping. I seem to do this a lot in the winter where I am really focused on getting meals prepped and into the freezer and things like that. So I'm just bringing you along for the ride. I am also homeschooling while doing this. So you'll see the kids in the background and the stuff I'm grading. I've started pulling out all the leftovers from my refrigerator anytime I'm doing meal prep stuff. If I have something in the fridge that I can repurpose and use in a different dish, I'm trying to use that. I have all of my notes in front of me, all of the different things that I'd like to cook, and I am standing in front of a space heater because it is freezing. This was actually filmed during the week that we got snow here in in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. We got like 6 inches of snow. Coldest winter we had in 30 years here, I guess. So I was enjoying my space heater, especially since I had to go into the garage, which was very cold, and then get stuff out of the freezer, which of course the freezer is also cold. Sometimes when I'm meal prepping, I have to look through what I already have and get an idea before I can go through the process of making new meals. It just helps me reacquaint myself with what we have in our house. Oftentimes, I've tried so many times, truthfully, to have these running lists of what I have in the freezers and the different refrigerators, but the kids get into stuff and they just can't seem to remember to mark things off of the list, and so I've given up on it. You can see Seth came out to hang out with me while I started jotting down everything that we had in the freezer. He just kind of lets me work through my own process with all of this. So this is chicken and dumpling soup. Typically I would can this, but I had a whole bunch that I had made and then frozen, and I decided to make a really big batch of this for everybody to enjoy because it was so cold out. And what more could you want other than chicken and dumpling soup when it's freezing outside? It's like the perfect dish. And so what I did was I took the frozen chicken and dumpling soup in these containers, dumped it all into the crock pot, and the only thing that I don't add to this when I'm freezing this is the actual dumplings. Once the soup heats up in the crock pot, I will go ahead and add the dumplings into this and have that turn into, obviously, the chicken and dumpling part of the soup. But yeah, it was really cold, and this just seemed like a perfect dish to have when it was cold outside. And then, as you can see, I'm so obsessed with this veggie tray. I'm constantly refilling it in all these meal prep videos. But yeah, that's what we're doing here. I'm putting veggies in my veggie tray. I'm actually thinking of getting a second one and having fruits in it. I don't know. And then doing like a yogurt dip maybe. I feel like that would be really good. I'm just sharing my thoughts with you at this point. I'm just planning out loud here. I also have a lot of these glass containers, and I'm rinsing these out so I can put other things in them. I had somebody say to me in a comment recently, they were like, "Your kitchen is a mess." And I'm thinking to myself, well, yeah, I pulled out every leftover I have and I'm meal prepping for the entire week. Of course it's a mess. I can't put everything away when I'm all still using it. So typically my kitchen counters are very clean and picked up, but oftentimes you guys are joining me when I'm bulk cooking. And when I'm bulk cooking, I often have a lot of things out on my counters. So I had made a really big batch of potatoes earlier on in the week. And having these leftover mashed potatoes, I was like, you know what would be absolutely outstanding is homemade perogies. We love perogies. It's a family favorite. So I have this bowl on the counter, which I'm using for scraps because we make homemade veggie broth here. And so I'm just kind of keeping all the scraps together and off to the side. And then I have onions because when I'm making perogies, I will typically pan fry some onions and then reheat the mashed potatoes. And so it's all warm and soft and easy to work with. That'll be the innards of the perogies. Now, as I'm juggling everything, I'm also going to be doing the yogurt pops that my kids love. I've talked about this many times. You'll often, if you stay with our channel, you might see a little bit of repetitiveness because of the fact that I do have these things that our family really enjoys, and they're often going on in the background, so I'm making things that you've already seen before, but it just shows you that they're a tried and true favorite. So now we are going to get started on the pierogi dough. I know a lot of people who do this a little bit differently. The way that I typically start this off is with 2 eggs, and then we are going to work in our other ingredients. So in addition to the eggs, we are also going to add to this 4 cups of flour, and then you're going to need a little bit extra for actually kneading the dough and making sure it's not sticky. And then we'll also add into this about a teaspoon of salt and roughly a cup of water. We basically just want to make kind of a dry dough, not overly dry, but also nothing that's going to stick to our counter. And we're going to just mix this up in the mixer. So the other day, my sweet husband tried his hand at making pot roast for everybody because I wasn't feeling very well, and it was on our dinner menu. And although it was good, it wasn't, the kids didn't love it exactly, but he did a good job. And so anyways, I took the rest of the pot roast and I put it into our pressure cooker, and then I'm adding into this beef bouillon seasoning. And again, I have this seasoning, the homemade seasoning, in a seasoning video on YouTube that you can watch if you want to. And then I'm also adding cream of anything to this, because I ultimately want to make an au jus sauce, because we are going to turn this into au jus sandwiches with the roast beef. So I'm going to top this with water, and I'm going to put this into my pressure cooker for, I think we did, I don't know, like 35 minutes. The meat was still a little bit tough the first time that it got cooked, so I figured I could put it back in the pressure cooker for a decent amount of time to make it really soft and falling apart. So here we have our onions all cooked down in the butter, and then our mashed potatoes. I had it in my head that I had way more mashed potatoes than I did, so I actually ended up making more mashed potatoes to put into the pierogies, but I'm really glad I did because I made a ton of them and we enjoyed them throughout the week, and I put a few in the freezer too. In addition to using up the mashed potatoes, which I had thought I had a ton of, I also had these cans of chili that we had made. We had done a, they call it a Super Bowl, but it's soup like soup you eat, not Super Bowl as in the actual Super Bowl. It's a play on words. The church does it, and it's a meal thing that we do. So I had brought a ton of chili, and obviously not all of it got used, and I had made some so that I could can it. And I was looking at the chili and thinking, you know what would be great? Would be chili with cornbread, kind of like a tamale-pie, but not exactly the same thing, with leftovers. So I took our chili, put it into a big pot, added taco seasonings to this, and then cooked it on the stove, brought it up to basically to cook enough to work the seasonings into it. Took some cornbread, crushed it up, added into this a little bit of enchilada sauce, topped it with the chili, a little bit of mozzarella cheese, and some diced green chilies that we had canned from the garden. And this was actually really good. It was just a really unique way to use the leftovers, turn it into something different, so that way we weren't just eating chili night after night after night. And it created one meal for us to have for dinner and one to put in the freezer, which is always a bonus, especially as spring is getting started. We are undergoing a lot of garden and yard projects right now, to the point that I haven't been filming as much because I have been outside in the garden, all sweat, no makeup, my hair is a wreck, just fully focused on getting the garden projects done and not focused on altering camera angles or pausing to talk to you guys, because I will do that and then I will not actually get anything done. So you'll hear more about that in the coming weeks, but yeah, this was great. All right, pierogi dough. So once this is all good and together in dough form, you can do this two different ways. You can roll it out by hand with a rolling pin, which I did for part of this, but I had made so much dough. I didn't anticipate exactly how many pierogies we were going to be making because I just used no common sense in this and just made a ton of dough and then needed more mashed potatoes, and it was just a lot. But you can also run this through a KitchenAid pasta maker. If you have one of those pasta maker attachments, you can run the dough through that, and then it's nice and thin and you don't have to roll it out so much. I did have to change during the course of this video because I had spilled all over my dress, so just forgive the outfit change here. But basically you want to roll these out, and then I use the top of a canning lid because that seemed to be the right diameter for what I felt in the moment was a good size for a pierogi. And then this is going to be the base for our pierogi circle. Okay, Alexa, thank you. I'm not sure if you guys heard that. Alexa was announcing that somebody was at the front door. Then you're going to put about 1.5 teaspoons worth of the pierogi filling into this, fold it over, and pinch the pieces together. I make pasta somewhat regularly in our household, so I have these little pasta making attachments where you can run the pasta edger along the seam of the pierogi, and it will, make it very put together. So I do end up doing that, but I like to have several pieces together all at once, and then I'll run the pasta attachment over it. And what you're going to do is you're going to put this into boiling water, and you're going to boil this just long enough so that they start to rise to the surface of the boiling water. After that, I will pan fry these with a little bit of oil in a very, very hot pan, just enough to sear it and give it kind of a crisp. But I don't like it overly crunchy. I'm not a crunchy pierogi fan. I am definitely a more like chicken and not chicken and dumplings, but dumpling-esque, like a steamed dumpling that you might get from a really good. My children are playing outside in the front yard with their dad, so every 2 seconds our Ring doorbell is going off, being like, someone is at your front door. Anyhow, I like the texture of dumplings that are a little bit more doughy and not as crispy, but you could make this into a really crispy dumpling if you wanted to. And here you can see them once they're done, and I toss these in salt, and these are so good. Oh my stars, they are so good. But as you can see, I ended up making way more than necessary for the course of this video, to the point that the next day I had all the dough and all of the filling, and Seth was like, all right, I'm gonna come over and I'm gonna help you make these, and you can boil them and fry them, and we'll just get this done. Because I don't know if you can see by the sink right there, there's just trays and trays of pierogies that I made. But everybody in the house loved them, so it ended up being a very good thing, and we got to put lots of these in the freezer. Alright, you guys, that is going to wrap up this video. Go make some pierogies, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.